Police officer arrests Black Army general in an affluent neighborhood, sparking a chain of events that highlight systemic issues in law enforcement. Today, we uncover the details of an incident that begins with racial bias and escalates to a confrontation that transforms both a community and a police department. If you find this story compelling, let us know by pressing 1 or 0. Your feedback inspires more impactful stories. Major General David Carter, a high-ranking officer in the United States Army, was taking one of his customary afternoon walks along the tree-lined streets of Willow Lane. David was a tall, imposing figure in his mid-50s, his posture and steady gait reflecting decades of military service. Despite his casual attire, a plain navy t-shirt and dark jeans, there was an air of authority about him. This walk was his respite, a time to clear his mind and reflect on the responsibilities he carried. As a leader, as David enjoyed the warm, late summer afternoon, he was unaware of Officer Aaron Mitchell, who had been patrolling the neighborhood in his squad car. Mitchell was a 10-year veteran of the force, known for his strict approach to law enforcement, driving slowly through the quiet streets. He noticed David, a tall, muscular black man walking alone in this predominantly white, affluent neighborhood, raised his suspicions. "What's he doing here?" Mitchell muttered to himself, pulling his car to the curb. David was used to the occasional curious glance, but as Mitchell stepped out of his patrol car and approached, David's military instincts kicked in. He stopped walking, his expression calm but alert. "Hey, you there?" Mitchell called out, his tone sharp. David turned to face him. "Good afternoon, officer. Is there a problem?" Mitchell's eyes narrowed as he scrutinized David. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" David raised an eyebrow, but remained composed. "I'm taking a walk. I live a few blocks away. This is a private neighborhood," Mitchell replied. "We don't usually see people like you around here. I'm going to need to see some ID." David's jaw tightened at the implication. Slowly, he retrieved his wallet, handing over his driver's license. Mitchell took it and walked back to his car, glancing over his shoulder with suspicion. The interaction had drawn the attention of a few neighbors who peeked through their curtains or paused mid-task in their yards. Mitchell ran David's ID, finding no criminal record and confirming his local address. Yet, something about David's calm demeanor bothered him. Returning to David, he said, "Your record's clean, but I'm going to need you to stay right here while I make a few calls." David's patience was wearing thin. "Officer, I've complied with your request. What more do you need?" "I'll decide what's needed." Mitchell snapped, frustrated. He reached for his handcuffs. "You're coming with me for further questioning." The cuffs clicked into place, and David was led to the patrol car. A woman walking her dog captured the scene on her phone, her expression a mix of disbelief and concern. David sat in the back of the squad car, his military composure intact despite the injustice of the situation, the station, and the revelation. At the station, Mitchell marched David into a holding room. Sergeant Rebecca Torres, a senior officer known for her fairness, noticed the commotion and followed. "What's going on, Mitchell?" Torres asked, her tone sharp. "Caught this guy walking in an upscale neighborhood," Mitchell replied, acting suspicious. Torres looked at David, then back at Mitchell. "Did you run his ID?" "Yeah, it's clean," Mitchell admitted, his confidence faltering. "But I thought—" Torres cut him off. "That's General David Carter, high-ranking officer, decorated veteran. You brought him in without cause." Mitchell's face paled. "I didn't know." "And that's the problem," Torres said coldly. She turned to David. "General Carter, I apologize for this unacceptable treatment. You'll be released immediately." As Torres unlocked the cuffs, David rubbed his wrists. "Thank you, Sergeant. But this isn't just about me. Incidents like this erode trust between law enforcement and the community." Torres nodded. You're right. This will be addressed. A spark for change. The incident quickly gained attention after the video taken by the bystander went viral. Community leaders demanded action, and the police department initiated an internal investigation. Mitchell was suspended pending the outcome, and Torres took the lead in implementing reforms. David was invited to a town hall meeting organized by the local neighborhood association. Residents, officers, and community activists gathered to discuss the incident and how to move forward. Standing before the crowd, David spoke candidly. "What happened to me wasn't just an isolated incident," he said. "It's part of a larger problem that we need to address together. Trust is built through accountability, transparency, and mutual respect." Sergeant Torres joined him at the podium. "We're committed to change," she said. "This department will implement mandatory bias training, improve community outreach, and ensure officers are held accountable for their actions." Ripple effects. The reforms began to take root. Officers attended workshops on cultural awareness and de-escalation techniques. Patrol policies were revised to include stricter guidelines on stops and searches. Community police relations improved as officers like Torres and Ramirez, a young officer inspired by the changes, actively engaged with residents. David's advocacy extended beyond the neighborhood. He partnered with national organizations to promote equity in law enforcement. His story became a catalyst for broader conversations about systemic bias, inspiring reforms in other communities. Moving forward, months later, David resumed his walks. The stares that once held suspicion were now replaced with nods of acknowledgement and smiles. On one walk, he encountered Ramirez, who rolled down his patrol car window and greeted him warmly. "Good to see you, General," Ramirez said. "We're working hard to make sure this community feels safe for everyone." David smiled. "Keep it up, officer. Change starts with each of us." Back at the station, Torres reflected on the progress. The road to change was long, but strides had been made. The department's culture was shifting one step at a time toward a future where respect and justice were the foundation of their work. For David Carter, the incident was a reminder of the challenges that remained, but it also reinforced his belief in the power of resilience and the importance of standing up for what's right. As he looked out at the community he had worked to transform, he felt hopeful. Change was slow, but it was happening one conversation, one policy, one act of courage at a time.